You're listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brenna Hicks, the Kid Counselor. This is the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast, where I give you insight, awareness, and enlightenment about your parenting and your relationship with your kids. In today's episode, we are continuing with the 4 pillars. So we have already covered reflecting feelings and choice giving. Now we're moving into limit setting. So the 3rd pillar, and something that I'm actually really excited about for the limit setting pillar, is you use the first 2 and fuse them into a limit setting process. So we will look back at the reflecting feeling skill and the choice giving skill, and then you will learn a framework for setting limits with your children using those 2 skills in combination. And here's why I think that the 4 pillars work so well with each other and in conjunction with each other, because they all integrate seamlessly. You often can use multiple pillars in any given scenario. And specifically, once you understand the value of one of the pillars, you can see how it influences the rest. And that's very true in the limit setting skill, because you start with reflecting feelings and you end with giving choices with a neutral limit in between them. So we are going to look at the 3 steps, dive into that today, and keep in mind that this is the correction skill. In other words, many parents will say, okay, so I want to be all in with this child-centered approach. I want to learn the skills. I want to use the pillars effectively. And what do I do for discipline? What do I do to correct my child's behavior? When do we get to the section that talks about addressing the struggles that we have in our family? It's really helpful to think of limit setting as the corrective skill, but it is also, probably more importantly, 2 things. Number 1, preserving of the relationship because of the way that it is presented. And it allows the child to practice self-control and self-regulation. So in traditional discipline methods, in any way that we would normally approach the correction of whatever's going on, we are in charge, we are in control, we dictate what happens, we enforce the consequences, we have all of the power, and we make sure that our kids comply. Not only does that fracture the relationship, it creates more power struggles, and the child has no opportunities to practice what it feels like to accept consequences, what it feels like to understand how self-control is developed, to actually work on self-regulation skills. And all of that comes from the limit setting process. So I think you'll find this really helpful. And again, it's just a combination of what we've already talked about. So it should be able to be something that you implement pretty quickly and easily. The path to calm, confident, and in control parenting starts now. Okay, so when we're talking about limit setting, the very first step of the 3 is to reflect the child's feeling. Here's why this matters, and this is what we talked about when we actually covered the reflecting feelings pillar. A child's feelings are always valid. They can always be acknowledged, and it is helpful for the child to feel heard and understood. So when your child is screaming at you, when they're hitting their sibling, when they're getting in trouble at school, when they refuse to get out of the car, when they throw their shoe across the room and it breaks your lamp, whatever's going on, the behavior might need a limit, but the feeling is always valid. So the child is not wrong for being mad. The child's not wrong for being frustrated. The child's not wrong for getting dysregulated, but the behavior needs a limit. And if we can keep that in mind, it changes the whole dynamic. Because when we reflect a feeling, it immediately diffuses the intensity of the emotion. Just by saying out loud to your child, you're really, really upset about what happened. You're so mad that your brother took your fire truck. You're really disappointed that you didn't get to go play with your friends. Just by saying that out loud to the child, Not only do they feel heard and validated and understood, it diffuses the intensity of the emotion. So that automatically ramps them down a little bit. And then the child feels that the relationship persists. Even in the midst of their meltdown, even when they're tantruming with the best of them, the child knows that you love them, you unconditionally accept them, and while you set a limit on behavior, you're not mad at them for how they feel. So we always lead with reflection of feeling. So whatever that is, we say it out loud. You're disappointed, you're angry, you're frustrated, you're annoyed, you are angry, you're upset. I mean, you can choose whatever feeling matches the scenario best, right? And then you move into the second step, which is setting the neutral limit. So here's why this matters so much. The neutral limit is not meant to do anything other than set an expectation of what is or is not for doing. So let's go back to the example where a sibling took the fire truck. So the child probably feels betrayed. So in that scenario, you might say, "You're really betrayed that Tommy took your fire truck." And related aside, let me take a side turn for a second. Don't dumb down emotions for kids. I've had so many parents, I've actually had therapists ask me this too. So therapists and parents alike will say, yeah, but I mean, is a 4-year-old really going to understand the word betrayed? I don't think that's really an age-appropriate emotion. Emotions are emotions. It's no different than telling them the word photosynthesis. It's a big word and they may not understand what the word means, but you can explain it to them if they need explanation. So if you say you're really betrayed, if betrayed is how they feel, say that word to them. It's emotional vocabulary. It's development of emotional IQ. You never need to dumb down the emotion to make it more palatable for young ears. If they're not sure what the emotion means, they'll ask you. But they will learn what betrayed feels like for them. They're dealing with the somatic reaction of that emotion. They can feel in their body how yucky they feel in that moment. So now they have a word for it. So don't replace it with something else. That doesn't help them build an accurate emotional vocabulary. If it's betrayed, you can say betrayed. Okay, so I'm back on track. So when you say you're betrayed that Tommy took your fire truck, but your brother is not for hitting. Okay, you're not wrong for feeling the way you feel. I want you to feel heard, understood, and validated. But your brother is not for hitting. Notice that it's A is not for B or X is for Y. So your brother is not for hitting and or people are not for hitting, if you want to enlarge it a little bit bigger, because if we say your brother is not for hitting, then there's the possibility that they might think their sister is. So you have to know your children and know which one is more appropriate to say. So you may want to say people are not for hitting. So that would be the A is not for B. X is for Y would be hands are for being kind. So there is the A is for B. X is not for Y. You can do either one. So hands are not for hitting or hands are for being kind. All right, so now you've set the neutral expectation. Now, if we stop there, that's 2/3 of the battle, but we have the third step, which is just as important, and this is where we give them choices. Here's what we know about kids. They are emotional, they're here and now, they're driven by whatever feeling they have at any given moment. So if you say, you're really betrayed that Tommy took your fire truck, but your brother is not for hitting or people are not for hitting, that is helpful and they know what is expected of them, but they don't know what their alternatives are. So if you don't then provide the choices, you can choose to come tell me what happened, or you can choose to ask for him to give it back. Which do you choose? A child needs to replace one behavior with another. Remember, they're not rational, they're not cognitive, they're not going to think through it, they're not going to reason through it. So if you just stop with the reflection of feeling and the limit, in the next moment that something like that happens, they don't know what to do with it. So I'm feeling the same way again. I'm going to react the way I always have, unless I have something that I can replace the original behavior with. So in that scenario, you're really betrayed that Tommy took your fire truck, but people are not for hitting. You can choose to come tell me what happened, or you can choose to ask for him to give the fire truck back. Which do you choose? Now he knows, okay, I have options. Do I want to go tell mom or dad, or do I want to ask Tommy for it back? And the more that you do this 3-step process, you reflect the feeling, you set the neutral limit, and then you offer alternatives with choices, the child learns actions have consequences. The child learns to own and accept the outcome. So there's responsibility over decisions. They learn to self-control and self-regulate. Do you always want to have to step in and break apart your warring children because they're hitting each other? Inevitably, what you're teaching them is you go as far as you want to go, you get as out of control as you want to get, you cross the line, and I will step in and control your behavior for you. I will grab your hand before you hit Tommy. I will physically separate the two of you. I will send each of you to your rooms. I will make sure that you stop hurting each other. What does your child learn about self-control and self-regulation? What they're learning is, I don't have to control my behavior. Someone else will always step in and control my behavior for me when it gets out of hand. There's no self-regulation development there. There's no process of learning self-control. But when we do this 3-step model of limit setting, the child very quickly learns what it means to feel the weight of a choice and comply with expectations. So that is the 3rd pillar of 4. So next week we're moving into encouragement, which is the last one. And I do want to let you know, once we get through the 4 pillars, the week after that, I'm going to circle back to the limit setting pillar and move into advanced limit setting. Because inevitably the question I know all of you are saying out loud to me through the airwaves is, okay, but what if my child chooses not to come tell me and not to ask Tommy for the fire truck back? Then what? Well, that's when we move into ultimate limit setting. So I promise there's a part 2, but I want to get through the 4 pillars first. So we will eventually get to the advanced and ultimate limit setting in a couple of weeks. So if you have questions, I would love to hear them. Please email me at brenna@thekidcounselor.com. You can also call my call-in line and leave me a message, and then I can answer your question that way. And that number, if you are in the States, is 813-812-5525. You can leave a message on there, and then I can answer your question on air from the voicemail as well. But you can always email me, brenna@thekidcounselor.com. Please visit playtherapyparenting.com so that you can sign up for my newsletter. And if you subscribe to the newsletter, I will be happy to send you a video of a workshop I did on birth order. And it will really help you understand how the order in which your children were born affects their personality, as well as yours and your birth order role as a child, your parents' birth order roles, your friends, your spouse, everyone in your life. It will forever change the way you look at relationships. So I'd love to give you access to that video if you sign up for the newsletter. So thank you so much for spending part of your week with me. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you, and we will talk again soon. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Play Therapy Parenting Podcast with Dr. Brenna Hicks. For more episodes and to subscribe to our newsletter, please go to www.playtherapyparenting.com.